sale of Chickasaw lands. The Treaty of Pontotoc Creek was in 1832, and after that treaty, they required in the treaty that a survey be made. The land was then patented to individual Chickasaws, and they were given 2 years from the date of the land patent to alienate, that is, to sell their land and move to Oklahoma. The Indians were the Chickasaws were the only tribe that wound up in Oklahoma with money in their pockets. They took their slaves with them. They were slaveholders, and they moved out there, and they are still the richest of the American Indian tribes. Of course, all just seemed to bubble up out from under the ground, and then casinos started getting built. I don't know how that happened, but it did, and these people many of them are wealthy. And right now, if you'll follow the Tupelo Journal every once in a while, I hate to even think about it, but look at it every now and then, and you'll see where there's more Chickasaws coming back in here, and they're buying land up rapidly and taking it out of the tax structure of our state. But that's neither here nor there. That's their business, and if they want to do it, I don't blame them, because it's a pretty place. In my opinion, the prettiest place on earth is right here in northeast Mississippi, and it's the best place on earth because we've got the best people. Now, I recognize that you people live over here in Tennessee, and we pray for you every once in a while.
We do.
But I think you'll do all right. Just come see us every once in a while. Robert Gordon was a man of some wealth. He lived in Menegaff, or was born in Menegaff, Scotland. I don't know where Menegaff was, but it's somewhere up north of England. And he was born in 1788. Upon reaching his majority under English law at that time, he was not the eldest child, and therefore under the doctrine of what we call primogeniture, where the property, the name, the estate went primarily to the oldest male heir. He was not the oldest. He had an older brother named James, who had earlier, when reaching his majority, moved to Nashville and became wealthy. Now, I don't know that he didn't have a whole lot of money in his pocket when he left Scotland, because these people were rich, they were landowners, they were that kind of people. But Robert, seeing what his older brother James had done, said, well, I think I'm going to take my inheritance and go over there and see James. I think maybe he can show me how to make money in Tennessee. And sure enough, he goes to Nashville and is an extremely successful businessman in Nashville. His brother James had owned 3 steamboats, just an awful lot of money, and had done very well, and Robert went right along with him. With the Treaty of Pontotoc Creek in 1832, Robert saw an opportunity of inexpensive land and an opportunity to come down here and farm. And he did. He came to at first to Cotton Gin Port, which was a little slice of Mississippi on the northeastern side that had earlier been given under treaty with the Chickasaws to the United States government. And Cotton Gin Port was the farthest point up the river that navigable boats could make it. So that's where he hung his hat. Now at the same time, we've got the Chickasaws who operated under they had a king and a queen, and it was primarily, though, it was a matriarchal society. The women ran the program, but they do anyhow, y'all, and I thank God they do, because but you, there was another old Scot named Logan Colbert. And Logan Colbert had come into North Mississippi much earlier, had married a Chickasaw woman, and had been very successful. Logan had 5 sons. Each of those sons had been successful in the Chickasaw Nation, and they were, although the Chickasaws had a king and a queen, these 5 men were really the chiefs and the leaders of the tribe. One of them, up here at Colbert's Ferry, wherever it is,
Alabama.
Y'all know where it is, where the bridge goes across the river down here. That one, of course, is the one that when Andrew Jackson was going to New Orleans, he took them all across the river, and then when they came back, he charged them before they could get back across Tennessee. We got crooks down in our part of the world too. But anyhow, a woman, a Chickasaw, half Scottish woman named Molly Gunn, who was married to a Chickasaw, full-blooded Chickasaw, was given the land on which Lochinvar, the house, was to be built. Robert Gordon bought 5 plantations. He had over 500 slaves. He was a man of considerable, let's just put it like that. It was said that he could take his cotton to Cotton Gin Port from Pontotoc, it's about 40 miles there, without getting off of his own land. Now that, though it's said, was not the truth, but it was not far from being the truth. He was wealthy. He married a woman in Cotton Gin Port named, her maiden name was Walton. Her great-grandfather was George Walton of Georgia, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. These people were important in the early part of our American heritage, and they continued to be important as they came along. Robert Gordon wanted to build her a house commensurate with his position and hers in the middle of what was, in all practical purposes, an absolute wilderness. He cut trees. He built Lochinvar. Lochinvar one article in the book suggests that there's 15 rooms. Y'all, there are 8 major rooms and 2 halls and a 154-foot porch that was 18 feet wide. Now, the rooms are all 22 by 22. There are 4 downstairs, 4 upstairs. 22 feet by 22 feet. they're made with the flooring is 2-inch boards that are 22 feet long. There aren't seams in them. In 1898, I'm gonna jump ahead just a minute. My daddy had a cousin who was a Fontaine, and he practiced law there in Pontotoc. And Jack Fontaine, John Fontaine was his real name, but we called him Jack. Jack and Miss Catherine bought Lochinvar at a tax sale in 1898 and kept it until 1957, 60, whenever it was that Forrest and his first wife bought the house. He paid $50,000 for the house and 300 acres. The house, no telling what the thing is worth, but y'all, and I had wanted it so bad, I had coveted the damn thing, and it was just one of those things that, Lord, I'm so thankful that God was looking out for me and the house too, because in 2001 a tornado hit that house and tore it to pieces. Only 2 people in North Mississippi that I know had the money and the good desire to restore it. And for 3 years, they lived in it while the carpenters scoured the countryside, picking up boards and taking them back and sticking them in their appropriate places. The house has been completely restored. They took the chimneys off though, which in some extent I'm sorry, because it really did give a balance to the house when it was complete, but I don't blame them for doing it because they were having problems with leakage. On the top of the house, above the 3rd floor, was an observatory in the middle of the house, and neither Jack Fontaine nor Forrest Tudor was ever able to get that darn thing to stop leaking. It's this thing up here. And it's by the time you get up to the top of the house, we're talking about you're right at 50 feet above the ground. That's a tall dude too. It is massive, the house is, and is absolutely gorgeous stuff. It sits out in the middle of about 40-acre tract. The road curves over the hills. Bobby Joe has seen it many times. Beautiful, beautiful place. The setting, everything about it is just really, really pretty. I could never, if I had ever gotten that thing, I could never have put the first stick of wood back in there. Forrest Tudor and Janice gave of themselves and gave it back to the community and to history. Now, let's talk about what happens next. Robert Gordon and his wife have 2 children, a daughter and a son. Son is named James, after his uncle. James farms. He goes to school there in Pontotoc County to the old Monroe Mission, which was a mission to the Chickasaws, initially operated by a man named Thomas Stewart. And they called him Father Stewart. Father Stewart operated this Presbyterian mission to the Chickasaw Indians. And he operated a school for Indian children and for white children. And I might add, just by way of interest, academic interest, if nothing else, the churches in Pontotoc County prior to the War of Union aggression all baptized people, regardless of race, into full membership in that church. The Baptist church did it in Pontotoc. The Presbyterian churches did it. The Methodist churches did it. An interesting side note, Civil War did an awful lot of bad stuff to all of us. It's neither here nor there, and I'm not going to get into that because I'm old school. I'm more Mississippi than I am anything else. I'll just put it like that. James Gordon grew up a rich young man. He had everything going for him. He married a girl from over Yallabusha County. No, I'm taking it back. Yeah, he did. Wiley, a Wiley girl, and they had 2 children. James, let me come back a little more. Another reason for the Colbert tie. The Colberts had assisted Andrew Jackson in the Creek Indian Wars and also in the Battle of New Orleans. Chickasaws had always fought with the American troops, whether it was against the British and the Indians in the French and Indian War or against the French, whatever, didn't make a bit of difference. Chickasaws were always with the settlers. So that was another reason for this Treaty of Pontotoc Creek getting where it was. Dr. Tudor suggests, and he put a lot of work and study into this book, that a lot of that had to do with Robert Gordon's influence with Levi Colbert and him working to get the Indians to sign the treaty. Treaty having been signed, then everything went smoothly after that. James Gordon, though, when he was about 21 years old, actually 24, he decides to run for the Mississippi legislature. Is elected, goes around spending money. He could spend money now. And he had taken on himself inviting a group of men to go with him to Africa on a safari. He goes to New Orleans. He buys 2 ships and equips them. And they're getting ready to go. And while he was in New Orleans, this was in 1852, there's already talk going on that we're about to get involved in a civil war. Instead of getting everything together and taking his folks over to Africa, James buys every Menard rifle in the city of New Orleans. He bought all the ammunition. He brought all the tack for a cavalry company. He came back to North Mississippi and proceeded to buy black horses. And he equipped a cavalry unit, I think of 300 men, with all the equipment necessary when the war came. he was elected the captain of the group. They came up here to Corinth. And in Corinth, they found a bit of problem. It seems that Robert Gordon was so important throughout the South that people were afraid to send his baby son up to Virginia to get in the midst of the war. And so instead, they sent him and his cavalry unit to Union City, Tennessee to guard the Mississippi River. Whereupon James kept sending telegrams to the Secretary of War, Walker. And he sent them over and over again, please send us to Virginia. Please give us an opportunity to whip the damn Yankees. And nothing went back. Finally, Secretary of War Walker sent a telegram to him, and it said, and I quote, "Take your blasted troops and go to blazes." Gordon accepted this as a green light. He took that to the railroad in Memphis and said, they want us in Virginia. So he takes his men, the railroad agrees, they take them to Bristol, and there's a 2-week delay in Bristol before they could get them on up to Richmond. But men, horses, tack, uniforms, everything gets to Richmond. Whereupon James Gordon goes into the office of the Secretary of War and said, I want to see the Secretary. The woman, of course, was hesitant to let him in, but did. And let James come on in to see the Secretary, and the Secretary looked at him and said, what are you doing here? And he said, you told me to come. And handed him the telegram, which completely teed him off, of course. He was most unhappy with that having happened. But he sent him on up. He was assigned to Jeb Stuart's cavalry unit in Northern Virginia. He participated in 33 battles and skirmishes while he was up there. He then started wearing them again, saying, I want to go back to Mississippi and get a larger cavalry unit put together. And he worried them and worried them and worried them until finally they sent him back. He came back to Mississippi and got another huge group of men together. And he must have been just an awfully, I don't know the word to use, but he had a magnetism. How he got these people involved, I don't really understand. But he did. Now remember, in the meantime, Robert dies, his mama dies, but here he is left with all of this land, all these slaves, all this property, and lots of money. So James is in the driver's seat, except the war didn't go real well. And he lost those 5 plantations. And he lost $6 million in 1 year. And he gave money to the slaves when he freed them. And he paid his debts, and he loaned money to his good friends who took bankruptcy and left him holding nothing but paper. In 1864, President Davis asked him to go to Richmond. Richmond sent him to Canada. His wife, the Wiley girl, had an uncle named Jacob Thompson. Jacob Thompson had also practiced law in Pontotoc, married a girl from Oxford, whose name was Kate Young. Jefferson Davis named Jacob Thompson head of the Confederate Secret Service, established him an office in Windsor, Ontario, which is across the river from Detroit. And he had participated, and there he met a fellow by the name of John Wilkes Booth. April 65, Booth shoots, kills Lincoln. His wife's uncle, Jacob Thompson, Booth, and Jefferson Davis all had bounties on their heads of $100,000, dead or alive. Jacob Thompson escapes, goes to England. On James Gordon, there was a $10,000 bounty. James is able to talk himself out of it. He is just a smooth talking fellow, and he said, and quite frankly, I believe him too. He said, I participated with John Wilkes Booth in a plan to kidnap him, but we certainly weren't going to kill him. And so, to make a long story short, they accept him back. Now, I'm leaving out a lot here, darn it. When he first went up there and met with Jacob Thompson said, what we need is, we need people who can get boats that can outrun the darn British Navy and run goods into our southern ports and then out of them. So, James Gordon had acquaintances in every major capital in Europe with whom he had direct conversations with regularity. He goes over there and he convinces the English to build him 3 blockade runners. The boats, the first one is built, and the charge was 3 loads of cotton. The first load of cotton was delivered to the West Indies, to the British. Second load of cotton, the boat got caught, and who should be on it but James Gordon. James managed to talk his way out once again. And he had an uncanny ability to do the right thing periodically. Is it Johnston Station, Tennessee? Wait just a second here.
Thompson Station.
What's that?
Thompson Station.
Thompson. That's in
Okay.
Nashville.
Now, y'all know all about this tape. Thompson Station, March 5th, 1863. He was involved in that particular instance where they captured 1,100 Yankees, a group of about 400 Confederates did it, and James Gordon was asked to transfer the prisoners to Tullahoma, Tennessee. And during that period of time, he was extremely kind to the officers and the prisoners of war, making sure they had sufficient food and creature comforts. Now, I'm gonna have to look at notes now. I can't just keep on running my mouth. A Yankee colonel by the name of Utley, U-T-L-E-Y, Colonel William L. Utley, said that James Gordon treated the officers with extreme kindness and did everything possible for the men, suitable rations, clothing, etc. Yankee General Coburn then asked that his sword be given to James Gordon with a note of appreciation for his kindness. 6 weeks later, Yankee General Whiskey Smith shows up and orders the burning of Lochinvar. And Ms. Gordon and one of the servants comes out, shows them the letter from General Coburn and the sword. And that ended that. There was no burning of the house. And if anybody, when y'all have these relic shows, if anybody comes upon that letter, please get a hold of Janice Tudor. They'll do anything for you if they could get a copy of that letter. Because, of course, it saved the house. Actually, the kindness of James Gordon saved the house, but it's the proof. The house is the proof, actually. James comes back penniless. He's broke. And his Yankee friends, rich friends around the world, supported him for a while. And then he realized that, hell, I got to do it myself. He took a job driving a milk truck, milk wagon. And the story goes that he had gotten down, he had one dime in his pocket. And while walking down the street in Oklahoma, he had rented a house down there, or someone had given him opportunity to live in it. He saw some mint growing on the side of the street, and he bent over and picked it up. Took his dime to the local bootlegger and got him enough whiskey to make a mint julep. And said it was the best he had ever had. Y'all, he went on with his life. He died, well, no, I'm leaving big parts out. Governor Noel, on the death of Senator McLaurin, appointed James Gordon to fill the unexpired term of Ansel McLaurin. And he went to the United States Senate. He was there for only a few months, I think 5 or 6, developed a host of close friendships with the United States Senate, and his speaking, his farewell address to the Senate of the United States was one of forgiveness and bringing us back together. It's a long speech. It was alluded to earlier by Bobby Joe. It's worth buying the book to get a copy of the speech, because I ain't gonna read it to you. But y'all, the man was an exceptional human being. He was wealthy. He never did anything for himself. But he was basically a good fellow. Now, I want to share one other thing, that Jacob Thompson had a home in Oxford. It was an enormous home. If any of y'all have been down there to see William Faulkner's house, it was right across the street from it. The only thing left is the carriage house from the homestead, which was the name of Jacob Thompson's home. Jacob Thompson also had been the Secretary of the Interior under President Buchanan. But when Whiskey Smith came to Oxford, Mississippi, he ordered his men to go into that house, the homestead, and burn it. The men came out and said, "There's a woman in there who's just had a baby." It was Jacob Thompson's son's wife. They picked up the bed, they moved it out in the front yard, and burned the house. These are not nice people, any way you look at it. And I don't know. I hope that we as people, regardless of what part of the financial scale we come from, can realize that Jacob Thompson was a good man. Pontotoc County has produced 4 United States senators, but I think this one was probably the best, and he stayed up there less than any of the others, and I ain't gonna say any more. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. And I thank each and every one of you for these gifts that were given too. You're awfully kind.
Have you got some books for sale?
I don't. No, I wish I did.
Bobby